and someone that we are all proud to have worked with and benefited from his service to our great city. Mr. Madison.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you've really covered it. And I just want to add, Ross was a constituent of mine, West Pasadena resident, who I knew very well. And his politics and viewpoints were very different from mine, but we could always engage in a rational, respectful discussion. And I did admire his service very much in all the different roles that you've described. He was a real sort of Renaissance person. You mentioned the military service. He was a longtime aviator. When I served with him on the Burbank Airport Authority Board in session, he would often cite real anecdotal and other evidence about flying. And in particular, we had issues with noise or flight paths and the like. And, he was deployed to Vietnam during his military service. So he's someone that I think we all should respect and admire and be grateful that we had. So I thank you very much for honoring him in this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Mr. Hampton, followed by Mr. Masuda.
It was really sad news to hear, extremely sad news, especially after, the death of our own council member, John Kennedy, to hear Ross Salvage has passed away, another amazing Pasadenian. As you mentioned, he's a John Muir alum. Now, he would always tell people that we went to the same high school. Of course, we didn't go to the high school at the same time, but Ross would be at every turkey tussle, and he would wear his Letterman's jacket. Not only was Ross, just a big believer in public education, but his time and service on the PCC school board, on the board of trustees, I'm sorry. And when I was on the school board, he was extremely instrumental and helpful with creating the John Muir Satellite Campus that is known as PCC Northwest, or as I, effectively call it, the heart of Pasadena. Ross Salvage will definitely be missed, and Ross is just a true public servant. As you mentioned, his time in the Navy, as well as him being on the airport commission. I had the opportunity to serve with him. He was the chair. Ross was so involved that he would actually go to people's homes when mentioning the noise concerns, and he would hang out at people's homes, and he would bring that information back. And so he will definitely be missed. My prayers and my deepest condolences and my love and just uplift is going out to his family right now and to the city of Pasadena, because we are definitely missing someone with a vast amount of institutional knowledge, who was a big staunch believer and a lover of the city of Pasadena. So I just want to say thank you, Ross, or Dr. Salvage, for your service, and you will be missed.
Mr. Masuda.
Thank you, Mayor.
Followed by
I want
Ms. Williams.
to echo all the things the other council members have said, and you, Mayor. Russ is an old friend. He's just a terrific supporter of the city of Pasadena. Of course, anything with the armed forces, he was always there. So when we had events at our Marine base in the 4th District, he was there supporting the lunches and the things that happened there. He was always there, so I really appreciated that. But Mayor, I remember we saw him together, and I don't know when you saw him last, but we saw him together at the last turkey tussle up at the Rose Bowl. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah, and it was always great to see him. So Mayor, I thank you for bringing Ross Salvage's memory to all of us. And I certainly support Ross's friendship, and I appreciate what everyone has already said. Thank you very much.
We would make it a point to see one another at the Rose Bowl, at the Turkey Tussle, and cheer for our respective teams.
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Mayor. Just very quickly, just to add to what my colleagues have said, I really appreciated Ross's finance background, and he and I would get very technical and wonky with each other about the Rose Bowl, about the airport, and so just we'll really miss him a lot. We also worked for the same company as well and did similar work, so I will miss his insights and all of his history in Pasadena and a lot of understanding of the various institutions here. Thanks.
Well, and in that regard, I'll remind us that Ross worked on the very first library tax measure and led the charge there. And when we started thinking through the measure to renew that tax, Ross was the first person we turned to. So again, and I did have an opportunity on behalf of the city council to reach out to Adriana, Dr. Selvage's wife, and express our condolences individually and collectively, and on behalf of the residents of Pasadena. So we will adjourn in this evening's meeting in the memory of Dr. Ross Selvage. Okay, and as soon as I learn any information about services, and Adriana's said that she would forward that to me, I'll ensure that members of the council are aware. Okay, next we have a couple of ceremonial matters. And first I'll turn to Chief Clausen to introduce our new Sergeant at Arms. Chief?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, the City Manager, and members of the public. Today, I have the honor to introducing the new Sergeant at Arms here. His name is Doug Hamblin. Doug, if you can come on up. Doug grew up in the city of Sunland, where he graduated from Village Christian Schools. And after graduation, he went to Rio Hondo College, and he was hired as a cadet by the police department in 1999. And in 2000, we hired him as a police officer and sent him to the Orange County Sheriff's Academy. Upon graduation, he's worked in numerous assignments throughout the police department, from a patrol officer to neighborhood action team, which are the officers on bikes. He was a motorcycle officer. He worked a fugitive apprehension team. He was a field training officer, worked auto theft detectives. He was also on the firearms team, and he was a corporal in patrol. He moved to audits and inspections, and now he's a sergeant assigned to our patrol division. He also is a peer support member. He's been a peer support member for the last 8 years. He's on the firearms training team, and he's also a member of the SWAT team, actually a sniper. The best shot I've ever seen of all of my 30 years in law enforcement is the best shot I've ever seen. So I don't want to go against him in a competition. He's also serving as one of the directors on the Pasadena Police Officers Association. Officer Sergeant Hamlin was awarded the Chief's Medal of Excellence in 2006, a Medal of Innovation in 2010, and also a life-saving award this year. He is married to his wife for 20 years. He has 8 children. With himself, it's a baseball team. And on his off time, he is a homeschool parent, active member of the church. He likes backpacking, hunting, and having adventures with his family. I introduce to you Sergeant Doug Hamlin. Thank you, Chief.
Sergeant, welcome.
Thank you, sir. It is an honor to serve in this position, and I look forward to doing for the city and for you whatever is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant.
It's an honor to know anybody with 8 children, man. That's a blessing, brother.
Thank you, sir. Organized chaos, it is.
I'll bet. Good. Your experience in crowd control must come in handy. Next, we have a proclamation to present, and we'll bring on Allie Everett and Andrea Jennings and Isis McDonald, president of Civitan. Are we on?
They should, they're coming in right now. There's Ally. There we go.
Well, Mayor Gardo, I believe we have everyone. Yes, we're good to go.
Great. And so this is a proclamation proclaiming National Disability Employment Awareness Month. People with disabilities are an important, vital part of our community as valued workers, civic leaders, housing owners, veterans, family members, and friends, and they are innovative and valued contributors in the workplace, the classroom, and the community. Recognition of the contributions of persons with disabilities is an effective way to overcome negative stereotypes and eliminate physical and attitudinal barriers to full participation in all aspects of community life, including education, recreation, and employment. Pasadena is committed to ensuring that city programs and employment practices effectively serve and benefit persons of all disabilities in order to support individual dignity, self-reliance, and productive lives for all people. And we are proud to renew our dedication to fostering equal access and demonstrating commitment to full inclusion of people with disabilities. Therefore, on behalf of the City Council, I do hereby proclaim the month of October 2022 in Pasadena as National Disability Employment Awareness Month and encourage all citizens to recognize the accomplishments and contributions of persons with disabilities throughout our community. Thank you. Ms. Everett?
Thank you, Ricardo, and good evening, council members. My name is Allie Everett. I am the city's accessibility coordinator. Thank you for the opportunity to recognize National Disability Employment Awareness Month at the U.S. Department of Labor that raises awareness about disability employment issues and celebrates the contributions of America's workers with disabilities. This year's theme for the campaign is Disability, Part of the Equity Equation. And here to talk today about the importance of National Disability Awareness Month is Andrea Jennings, Chair of the City of Pasadena Accessibility and Disability Commission, and she'll be followed by Isis McDonald, President of the Pasadena Civitan Club, which is a local service organization that promotes employment of people with developmental disabilities. Chair Jennings.
Thank you, Allie, and thank you for having me, Mayor Gordo, and council members. Thank you for your time. Disabled individuals make up 1/4 of the U.S. population. As you know, disability can intersect across all other populations. Disability does not discriminate. Multicultural communities like the City of Pasadena are the way of the future. National Disability Employment Awareness Month is important to me because it's an opportunity to have a candid conversation about a very important subject, equity. And I'm also going to offer you some solutions really quickly. As Ali stated earlier, the theme is disability is part of the equity equation. Equity is about leveling the playing field so that you're setting disabled workers up for success. Another important factor is representation matters. How do we measure the importance of disability inclusion in the workspace? Well, including disability as a demographic variable allows companies to reach their audiences more effectively, encourages equitable solutions, and is useful in creating and implementing policy change. If true representation is the goal, how can any company or organization or DE&I study leave out 1/4 of the US population, as I mentioned earlier? I just want to remind you before I close, leverage diverse voices, train your staff on best practices for inclusion, equity, belonging, and pay equity. Pay disabled individuals a livable wage. It makes the workspace and workplace a better place for all of us. My call to action is simply this. Reach out to disability-related organizations or leaders to put you in touch with qualified and professional disabled people, such as local ADA coordinators like Ali, the City of Pasadena's Accessibility and Disability Commission, the Department of Rehabilitation, or an independent living center like the Southern California for Resource Services Independent Living Center, or organizations such as Civitan. I am now pleased to turn this over to Isis McDonald, President of Pasadena Civitan, a service organization that promotes the employment of people with developmental disabilities in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings. Ms. McDonald, welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. On behalf of the Pasadena Civic Club, I thank you, Mayor Gordo, and the City Council member for recognizing October as National Disability Employment Awareness Month. This public recognition is so important in the efforts of everyone who works to make competitive, sustainable employment a reality for residents of Pasadena with intellectual and developmental disabilities who wants to be employed. Pasadena Civitan Club, established in 1929, has chosen as its primary impact area to support and develop employment opportunities for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Civitan has chosen to partner with Villa Esperanza, Ability First, to hold the annual Higher Up Employer Recognition event with the gracious support of the City of Pasadena and Mayor Gordo. We want to honor the outstanding Pasadena employers, a person with intellectual and developmental disabilities. This year, the event will be celebrated at the Villa Esperanza Service Campus on October 13th, next week at 5 p.m. We will honor 5 employers: the Department of Rehabilitation of Pasadena, Kids Space, Museum, Roscoe's House of Chicken and Waffles, Caltex Athenaeum Club, and Vons of East Pasadena. All 5 employers make significant contribution to furthering employment opportunities for people with developmental disabilities. Mayor Gordo will be there to help us honor these outstanding employers. Civitan also has an award designated for a person who continuously advocate and dedicate significant time and effort towards moving individuals with intellectual and developmental disability forward in their efforts to reach their full potential. This is called the Servant's Heart Award. And this year, we have selected Assembly Member Chris Holden, representative of 41st Assembly District, to receive this honor. We hope that all of you will join us on October 13th at Villa Esperanza and hope to meet with all of you at the event. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to present, and appreciate you the time tonight.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald, Ms. Jennings, and Ms. Everett. We'll see you on the 13th. Next, we have one more proclamation. If I can ask our Director of Transportation, Laura Cornejo, and I think Rich Deluvio and Donson Liu are also here. And we have Corey Belling, Blair Miller, Deborah Spector, Pilar Reynaldo from Complete Streets, and Colin Bogart from Day One joining us via Zoom. So today we are proclaiming National Pedestrian Safety Month. Walking as a mode of travel is environmentally friendly, and in our general plan, Pasadena has embraced the principle that people should be able to safely circulate throughout the community without cars. Walking in our neighborhoods is healthy and family friendly. The walkability of Pasadena is a positive attribute of our community, and the city and its Department of Transportation are committed to realizing complete streets designed to facilitate safe and convenient mobility for all. Today, the city recognizes the Pasadena Complete Streets Coalition and Day One are promoting the benefits of walking as a form of healthy recreation and an active mode of transportation to commute to school and work. And since we are all pedestrians from time to time, it's important to pay attention to what is going on around us, and drivers must remember that crosswalks exist at every intersection, whether painted or not, and be vigilant to ensure the safety of pedestrians consistent with the city's safe systems approach. On behalf of the City Council, I do hereby proclaim the month of October 2022 in Pasadena as Walktober and Pedestrian Safety Month, and urge that we all rededicate ourselves to enjoying the benefits of walking and ensuring the safety of pedestrians in our community. And we have a walker among us, Ms. Vice Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Gordo. And this is always one of my favorite months. I'm a year-round walker. And I know gas is super expensive. So when you think about turning your car on, you're worried about that gas tank. I encourage people to get out of their car and enjoy our city is just extraordinary for walking. Our sidewalks, our urban forest. It's been a little hot, I have to admit. And some of those super hot days, I'm a little more reticent, but I appreciate our Complete Streets Coalition, the work they do. And our city staff and DOT has really doubled down on their commitment in terms of making our city travel, getting around without a car, which is one of our guiding principles. So congratulations to all of you. And as you said, even as a walker, even if there is a crosswalk that is marked out, be aware. We've had too many pedestrian incidents, and so walk defensively, but walk as much as you can. Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I will present the certificate to Ms. Cornejo. Congratulations.
Picture?
Jeez.
Okay.
We'll grab a screenshot. Oh, here comes the clerk to the rescue.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I also want to just acknowledge the great partnership and collaboration with Day One and the Pasadena Complete Streets Coalition. Without community organizers and advocates and the support of those organizations, we would not be able to advance really our goal of making all our streets safer for all our users, but especially our most vulnerable, which are pedestrians. I want to invite the public to visit the website, walktoberpasadena.org. There are so many activities to encourage everyone to participate as a pedestrian, some really great and interesting walking tours. Councilmember Jones hosted the first one yesterday, kicked off our month. Almost every council member is hosting an event in their district. You can learn about local art, you can learn about local gardens, any number of things if you're interested, get to know your neighbors, and really just get out and get some fresh air and get some steps in. Thank you so much for this recognition. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. And Councilmember Jones, thank you for hosting that first event, the kickoff. Next, we will move on to public comment for matters not on the agenda. We have a number of cards, and so I'm going to ask that the speakers limit themselves to 2 minutes. If anyone who wishes to have 3 minutes, we'll invite you to state once the council has an opportunity and the community to work its way through the agenda at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. So the first speaker was, sorry, just move this over. First speaker is Dalen Riggs. He's in the meeting. Great. Followed by Michael Williams, followed by Brittany Pollock, followed by Julia R. Mr. Riggs or Dalen? Nope. Just left.
Okay. Next.
All right. We'll bring in Michael Williams, followed by Brittany Pollock, followed by Julia R.
Mr. Williams, welcome.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. As always, I'm calling for the firing of the officers that killed Anthony McLean. It has been far too long, and too little of a response for multiple murders, multiple instances of violating policy, and there's been no notable action by this committee to make sure that these things do not continue to happen here in the city of Pasadena. And actually, they have continued to happen here in the city of Pasadena. And whether you want to call them justified shoots or not, the problem is that there is no protocol for police to de-escalate situations. There's no protocol or reason for police to de-escalate situations. And so they don't have a reason to de-escalate, because when they shoot someone, whether the person is armed or not, whether the person is running or not, whether the person has committed a crime or not, when they shoot someone, there is no policy in place. There is no precedent that has been set that says that that officer receives any punishment that is adequate to the actions that that officer took. And so we continue and constantly keep seeing Pasadena Police Department do wild and crazy things, abusing our community, killing people, getting away with it, because this city council, along with the city manager, along with the chief of police, has done nothing to make sure that officers know that it is not okay to kill people in the city of Pasadena. That there should be a prioritization on de-escalating situations. That it's not okay to harass and abuse citizens here in Pasadena. It is not okay to violate their rights like they did to Anthony McLean, where they
Mr. Williams, your time has expired.
Fire the officers that killed
Thank you,
Anthony
Mr.
McLean.
Williams.
Thank you. Brittany Pollock, followed by Julia R., followed by Anthony Manusos.
Ms. Pollock, welcome.
Thanks. As the other caller stated, I'm also calling in the name of Anthony McLean. It's been over 2 years since Anthony was murdered on August 15th, 2020 by Pasadena police. Edwin Dumaguindon shot him in the back as he was running away. He's still on the force. Ronald Serrano knelt on Anthony's back as he was suffering from gunshot wounds. Ryan Mulrooney, Connor Duncan, and Christian Rosa were present at the time of his shooting and murder, and shortly after, to facilitate the cover-up of this senseless, and as the last speaker said, out of policy, because there is no policy that says that this is wrong. And they're still hired. You're still paying them. Our tax dollars are still paying them. It's so ridiculous. This is such a small ask. Fire the officers that killed Anthony McLean. Mayor, you are always talking when the public is talking. Why? You've said you had to run a meeting before. This is public comment time. You should know that. It's on the agenda. Stop talking over us. Jesus. Fire the officers that killed Anthony McLean. Why does this council defend and protect murderers? That's literally what you're doing, and you're telling the rest of the force that this is cool. Go ahead, kill people. We won't even fire you. It doesn't matter to us. What a disgrace. Over 2 years and you've just done nothing. With the community calling in literally every single week. Every week. Every time you have a meeting, you hear this. The city council's ignored this call. Why do you have public comment? So that you can check it off your list? You obviously aren't listening. You're talking over people. I'm watching you on my screen. Great. No one else is even visible. No one else's cameras are even on. This council is such a joke. This is such a joke. You can't even hold murder.
Thank you, Ms. Pollock. Your time has expired.
Thank you, Ms. Pollock.
Ridiculous.
Next speaker.
Defund.
Julia R., followed by Anthony Manusos, followed by Sonia Burnt. *6 to unmute, Julia. There you go. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead.
I'm also calling in the name of Anthony McLean. Again, like it's been said before, it's been over 2 years since his murder. He was shot in the back and then knelt on while he bled out. And every single week we call in, we have so many members from this community calling in to ask you guys to do the bare minimum of firing these officers. And it's just been, this entire whole procedure has just been a lot of mismanaged releases of videos that don't show a gun and just horrible things. And we're talking about, you know, I don't really understand why we have to, you know, celebrate someone on the force who's really good at shooting when we haven't put any policies in place of when people are shot in the back and people can just be murdered on the street with no reasoning behind that. There's no policies on this. We need this to be on the agenda. This has to become resolved. Every single week we call in and basically just continue to repeat the exact same data and just information over and over and over again. I'm not exactly sure what is not getting through to you all. It's incredibly sad. This was a young man's life. You know, it's not like this is just a statistic, or his name was Anthony McLean. Like, he was a son, he was a friend. I'm a teacher, and I can just never really get past the idea that I could have taught him, that I just will never be able to like unshake too. I see him in my like seniors that are graduating now. It's really despicable that nothing
Julia,
has been
your
done
time has
and no
expired.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Anthony Manousos, followed by Sonia Burnt, followed by Don Bookart, followed by Alan Shea. And when I ring the bell, there's a 30-second, that's a 30-second warning that time is about to
Mr.
expire.
Manousos, welcome.
Star 6, Anthony. There you go. Go ahead.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Oh, great. Well, first I want to thank the city council members, Steve Madison and Jess Rivas, for standing up for democracy during the selection process for replacement for council member Kennedy. They made it clear that the council's job is to validate what the people of District 3 want, not to select someone who doesn't have popular support, but appeals to the council. Let me be clear. I feel that Justin Jones is a good man, and he will be a competent council member. And I will hold him in my prayers just as I hold all the members of this council in my prayers. But Justin is clearly not the people's choice. We know that 41% of District 3 residents voted for Brandon Lamar. He had 300 nomination signatures and 89 letters of support. We also know that over 60% of the residents of this district are renters, and most would want a fellow renter on the council. Mayor Gordo asked Brandon a pointed question about why he voted only 2 or 3 times. And Brandon's response was honest and telling. I was one of those who believed that my vote didn't matter. By rejecting the choice of District 3 voters, the council has demonstrated that it doesn't feel that the voters of District 3 matter. This is undemocratic and it's unfair, and I feel I can't be silent. I attended the beautiful celebration of Council Member Kennedy's life, and I was moved by his words. All his life, he stood up for fairness. It is clearly unfair to deprive 41% of the voters an opportunity to be represented by someone they chose. It's also unfair to Brandon Lamar, a young man who worked hard, ran a good race, and earned a seat.
Mr. Manousos, your time has expired. We'll call on Sonia Burnt, followed by Don Bookart, followed by Alan Shea, followed by Kimberly Douglas.
Ms. Burnt, welcome.
Good evening. My comment relates to the alarming process used by most of this council to appoint a council member for District 3 to replace Council Member Kennedy. I note at the outset that this comment is not meant to denigrate Justin Jones. He is likely qualified. However, prior to the meeting last Thursday, the city told District 3 residents that the council wanted to hear from them on who would best serve as their council member given the needs of their district. Mayor Gordo publicly stated, quote, "I do think Mr. Madison's point that we listen carefully to residents of District 3 is an important one," unquote. But at the meeting, with the exception of council members Rivas and Madison, the council simply ignored the voices of the vast majority of residents who called in and who sent emails recommending Brandon Lamar for the appointment. This sent the terrible message to residents of District 3 that their voices do not matter. Many thanks to council members Rivas and Madison for giving due weight to the voices of the residents of District 3. Secondly, council members other than Rivas and Madison dismissed Mr. Lamar's vast community knowledge and experience in District 3, choosing council member Jones's experience as an engineer instead. If the council already had the voice of a renter and of someone who has intimate knowledge of and experience with the issues facing those who are hurting in its city, then maybe Councilmember Jones's experience could have been given more weight. But Mr. Lamar's experience and his perspective are exactly what are missing from this council. Please consider these points when you make the next appointment in December. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burnt. Next speaker.
Don Bookart, followed by Alan Shea, followed by Kimberly Douglas, followed by Olden Denham.
Ms. Burkhart, welcome.
Hi. I also was dismayed and absolutely enraged listening to the city council meeting last Thursday. I was stunned by the decision to select Justin Jones in the face of the overwhelmingly lopsided public support expressed both by mail and by phone for Brandon Lamar. I understand it was the council's responsibility to select a replacement, but the selection that was made was paternalistic and in spirit wildly undemocratic. The majority of the council ignored the fact that residents had spoken up and had tried to let you know what we were thinking. No one was asking you to read our minds. We were asking you to listen to our voices. In addition to expressing my rage at having been ignored, I want to speak today to also acknowledge that the city council will in December make another appointment for this seat. And the next 2 months are going to pass quickly, and we're going to find ourselves at this crossroads again. And the city council will have the opportunity to make this right and to make a fair and representative decision that the people of the district support. Also, I just want to state clearly that I've never met Mr. Lamar. I didn't go to school with him. He never knocked on my door during the last campaign. I am just a voter in his district who is feeling completely disenfranchised right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Shea, followed by Kimberly Douglas, followed by Olden Denham, followed by Adriana Batista. *6 to unmute, Alan.
Mr. Shea.
Hello. Glad to see we have a new start going into our new administration with Mr. Jones on board as the appointed counselor and also with our new city manager. As I call every week on the pivotal issue of Mr. Anthony McLean's shooting, murder, and corruption, my hopes would be that we can now focus on putting this behind the city of Pasadena. We call every week to remind you that if we're going to change directions and correct our wrongs, someone has to be a leader and stand up and just do the right thing. Anthony McLean was shot twice in the back. There are 5 different cameras showing that he did not have a gun. It has shown that the guns were brought in by Pasadena Police Department. They brought the guns in on the east side of North Raymond. It also shows where Anthony dropped the gun as he was running south. There's also marks that shows that the gun that was placed on the west side had a bullet in front of it as evidence, which they didn't identify, which they pulled out of the siding of the house that went through Anthony's body as he was running down the street. The video and the pressure that has been placed on the community should demonstrate the need of leadership to correct this wrong. Let's not have another Emmett Till here, people. The more you sit back and you just tittle around with this, each one of you're complacent with this, and you're adding to the systemic, the culture, the way that people look at Pasadena, ignoring any action for accountability. And you are supposed to be our leaders, our elected officials. Listen
Mr.
to the
Shea, your
call,
time has
do
expired.
the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly Douglas, followed by Olden Denham, followed by Adriana Batista, and then Heavenly Hughes, who's not yet checked in the meeting. Kim, go ahead.
Good evening, honorable council members. I am Kimberly Douglas, longtime resident of Pasadena District 7. The vote of 5 of you at the special meeting last Thursday really amounts to a clear dismissive attitude toward the many residents of District 3. And speakers before me have explained that even more eloquently. In addition, it showed a complete disregard for the current and ongoing work and effort by so many within that community. To state it more clearly, I think your vote squandered an opportunity to make John Kennedy's idea of one Pasadena more real and more tangible. Hard to know how this council will recover from it. It may never be considered credible to so many residents of Pasadena, no matter how many flowery words are said. Actions tell the truth. And the action of those 5 is that many, many residents of District 3 simply don't matter. The whole city now will be watching what this council does in December. Thank you.
Thank you. Olden Denham, followed by Adriana Batista, followed by Heavenly Hughes, if she checks in, followed by Ed Washaka. *6 to unmute, Olden. Go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, City Councilman. I guess I first get the niceties out of the way, and I'll try and get my thought across before we run out of time. But I want to say that I welcome aboard to Miguel. I want to also say much in respect of Justin. Congratulations. Although he probably wouldn't have been my choice. And even though I know him, respect him well, and I respect Lucius Smith, and I also respect Brandon. And I know them all, and I wish I could have had an opportunity to sit down and talk to them all. Because here's what we needed. We need someone loud enough like Brandon to stand up and challenge this whole system that we have going on here and fight for justice from the police actions. And we know what I'm talking about. Anthony McClain, that case has been going on much too long for any of you to play like you don't know what's going on. And there has been a big lie, and it's time for the truth to come out. But like I say, if I had my choice in choosing live in District 3, I would have chosen Brandon. I would ask both of these men to, and by the way, I am one of the elders in my community. I would ask both of these men to assist this young man, take him under their arms and guide him, because here's a young man who wants to be our leaders. And we, as my culture, we need some young leaders to be trained and brought up. In fact, I had even talked to John Kennedy about that very thing. I said, man, take this young kid under your arm if you could. And he told me he had reached out to him, but I don't know if he had or not. But Brandon should be nurtured, and he should be mentored by these young men, but he should be put in that position, because that's exactly what we need. Someone loud enough, someone to come in there and challenge what's been going on in there. And it's no secret. The Anthony McClain case is a scandal. Pasadena had an opportunity to
Mr.
step
Denham,
ahead
your
and just
time has
make
expired.
fight against racism.
We'll move on to the next speaker, Adriana Batista, followed by Heavenly Hughes, if she checks in. If not, Ed Washaka. Adriana, go ahead.
Hi, City Council and City Manager Marquez. I'm calling for multiple things. I wanted to just reiterate, fire Edwin Dumagwendon, who shot and killed Anthony McClain. Also investigate and fire Connor Duncan, who purposely hid his camera, his body-worn camera, and may have planted a gun on the scene of the crime, most likely did. I also want to acknowledge that on Friday, September 30th, marked 6 years since Reginald J.R. Thomas was tasered, beat, and killed by 8 Pasadena police officers. And this city council has refused to listen to the demands by the community, demanding to make a 24/7 mental health crisis trained professional available, working for the city to respond to similar scenarios where a family calls asking for help and tragically loses a father. I also want to say I'm disappointed but not surprised this city council, which favors real estate developers and landlords, rejected Brandon Lamar as the people's choice. I'm not surprised Jess Rivas, who was also the people's choice, listened to the people of Council District 3. I was surprised Madison supported, and just know that we're all watching and taking note of the city council members who said they were not going to
Ms.
listen
Batista,
to
your time has
meetings.
expired.
Thank you, Ms. Batista. Next.
Heavenly Hughes? Not checked in, so we're going to move on to the final speaker, Ed Washatka.
Mr. Washatka, welcome.
Greetings. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Greetings. I'm Ed Washatka, and I live in District 3. First, I want it to be known that I hold this council in high esteem. I've worked alongside many of you supporting efforts to make One Pasadena a reality whenever I could. Tonight, I must share with you my disappointment with the conduct of last Thursday's council meeting to appoint John Kennedy's successor. Specifically, as mentioned, the council and staff called on members of the community, both within and outside District 3, to participate with written and oral comments regarding appointing a successor to Councilmember Kennedy. So when the public stepped up and spoke overwhelmingly in favor of Brandon Lamar, 5 of you stepped back. You dismissed that participation. You ignored the public's choice of an inspired community activist. Worse, it felt as if some of you purposely misinterpreted what was said, or you mischaracterized the content of the speaker's comments. Sadly, I found the attitudes of some members last Thursday were condescending and pejorative. Many in District 3 and throughout the city are now frustrated, looking ahead to December when another appointment needs to take place. Where do we go from here? Is the council again going to ask for input, and then when it's provided, just snub it? One council member on Thursday stated, council business is like making sausage. To that I say right. And so last Thursday, the newest council member got schooled on how the sausage gets made. The recipe seems to be to fake listening to your constituents and be patronizing and paternalistic to them. Well, that's not the way to govern Pasadena. I know you all can be more fair than that. We need to be more fair than that and do the right thing as we continue our work toward One Pasadena. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes public comment on matters not on the agenda.
Thank you. Before we move on to the consent calendar, let me just remind the public, you know, if this standard that somehow if you ran for office and were not successful, you are entitled to an appointment if there's a vacancy, it's inconsistent with the charter, 1, and 2, inconsistent with democracy, and 3, I'll remind people that if that's the standard that we'd applied, Vice Mayor Wilson would not be sitting here today, because you'll all recall that Peggy York and Saran Hodgin had both run against my predecessor, Terry Tornick, and the council exercised its judgment and selected not Miss York or Miss Hodgin, but Vice Mayor Wilson. Jessica Rivas, our colleague, also would not be here because I had an opponent prior to running for the city council, and supported by, my opponent was supported by many of some of the people who've spoken up, like Mr. Washatka. And Ms. Padley would have, I'm sure, made a fine replacement, but that's not who the council selected. The council selected Ms. Rivas. And so let's not recreate history here. Let's in fact stay true to the will of the voters when they adopted the charter, and not give the impression that the council had some sort of alternative. And if that is the standard that anyone wants to press, that Mr. Masuda's or my predecessor, Mr. Hampton's predecessor, or Ms. Godley, Mr. Madison's predecessor, somehow are entitled to a succession plan, then that ought to be pressed when the time comes to amend the charter, and we will have an opportunity to have a discussion about possible charter amendments. Ms. Rivas?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for re-highlighting or highlighting again that we will have further discussion about the charter. I just wanted to point out one thing, which leads to my question, is that the arguments, and I don't want to relitigate this all right now, just that the prior votes was just one of many arguments, or one of several arguments, and people are very concerned about the public comment made that night, which leads to my question is, in terms of planning for the next appointment process, is that something that we will be moving forward with the ad hoc committee? What's the timeline? What can the council and the public expect in that regard?
We can expect we'll follow the charter and the dictates of the charter, and believe there's a timeline outlined, and we'll get the information out to the full council.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mayor.
Next, and by the way, many of us, Mr. Jones, have heard from members of the public applauding your appointment. I've heard directly from many people. And so I, again, welcome you to the City Council and look forward to working with you and your contributions.
Mayor, I just have a quick question. If we could get from the city manager just the update on the internal review for the officer-involved shooting, and then what the steps are after that, just so we in the public sort of have the right idea. Will OIR be doing a report? Will the IPA be doing a report? Will it go to the Police Oversight Commission? Just sort of a little bit about the nuts and bolts of how this happens, because I think we're getting pretty close. Thanks.
Sure, thank you. And as I said last time, it is in response to a question, a matter of weeks and not months. And I have yet to receive the administrative report, but I understand that it is being finalized. Again, a matter of weeks, and look forward to receiving that report. With respect to the process beyond my receiving the report and responding as I am required to respond, I don't know about, and so I'm looking at the city attorney about whether OIR or anybody else is going to have additional reports. But I can certainly look into that and report next time, unless the city attorney knows the answer to that question.
Well, yes, OIR will be doing a report. I don't know the timing of it, but they will do a report following the conclusion of the administrative review and the report that's issued as a result of that. And then in terms of the IPA, the independent police auditor, it's a person, was part of the process and has reviewed some of the documents and sat through some of the proceedings. So I don't know exactly what is anticipated with respect to that, but we can certainly report back in terms of the independent police auditor and whether the Police Oversight Commission, they have received periodic updates, I believe, at the CPOC, Police Oversight Commission.
Thanks. And it's just so members of the public know where they can address these issues when they come up. So I think a key question is, will the administrative review be public, or will it come to council? That's one question. And then the timing of the OIR report, does that come to council? And the IPA, will they review it at the police oversight? So then people know where they can go to express concerns.
Okay, we can report further on that.
Thank you. Okay, next I'll call on us to move to the consent calendar, and if there any questions or comments? Now's the opportunity. Otherwise, do we have public comment?
No, there's no public comment, no correspondence on consent
Okay,
items.
so moved.
Second on consent.
Moved and seconded.
And that's with item 4 as a joint action and item 15A as the city council sitting as the 457 deferred compensation plan trustees.
Okay. No comments with that. I'll ask for a call in the roll.
Councilmember Hampton? Councilmember Hampton?
Yes.
Thank
For the
you.
consent.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Gordo?
Yes.
Motion is approved without opposition.
Next, we'll move on to ordinances.
No, item
Oh, I'm
16.
sorry, 16, thank you.
Which is
Item 16
public
is a
hearing.
public hearing. Mr. Clerk?
This is the time and place for the public hearing on the 2021-2022 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, CAPER, for the Community Development Block Grant Program, Emergency Solutions Grant Program, and the Home Investment Partnerships Program on September 29th, 2022. The public hearing notice published in the Pasadena Journal. No correspondence was received regarding this item.
And I see Randy and Bill Wong present, but this is a routine matter. Is there anything that you'd like to call out for us?
We do have a
we do have a public comment. Okay. Well,
Okay, there is, as you indicated, this is an annual report based on the 5-year consolidated annual performance and evaluation report. So we're in year 2 reporting on it. Out of the goals, 3 of the goals have already exceeded the 5-year goals. One is exceeding, pacing ahead, and the others are programs that either haven't started yet or the individual projects that need to be completed before, and the goals will be met when they are completed. So
great.
that's the general
Thank you. Randy, do you have anything to?
Not at all.
Add?
He's ready to do a presentation if the council so
You can add or delete from any of the comments of Mr. Wong here.
No, he summarized it very well, but if
Okay.
you require a presentation, I'm ready.
Thank you. We do have one public comment.
We'll call on Sonia Burnt.
Ms. Burnt, welcome back.
Yes, may I ask how long I'm being given?
3 minutes.
Thank you. The draft report for fiscal year 2021, called the CAPER, is at best very disheartening and is incomplete. It is incomplete because an evaluation of the city's progress on every single objective for reducing and ending homelessness is blank, with the notation "to be determined." This includes the objective, quote, "addressing the emergency shelter and transitional housing needs of homeless persons," unquote. We have nearly 300 unsheltered residents in our city whose interim housing needs are unaddressed in this report, except for that one notation to transitional housing. There is discussion of the city's goals for, quote, "homeless overnight shelter," unquote, but that is not interim housing, which provides basic shelter and necessities for the extremely long waits to obtaining permanent housing. The report states that progress for the goal, homeless overnight shelter, over the first 2 program years is a scant 14% of the 5-year goal. Attachment A notes only 67 persons were given shelter over the entire year. Was that for one night? We don't know. The city uses motel vouchers for both emergency shelter and interim bridge housing. Where's any information for progress on creating interim housing? Homelessness is identified as a high priority need in the CAPER, but it is not treated as such in our city. Our housing department staff has stated publicly that the streets are, quote, "very unsafe," unquote. These residents face threats of personal assaults, and many suffer from chronic medical conditions and or mental health issues. The federal government is not wholly responsible for caring for our unsheltered residents. The city needs to allocate a lot more funding for interim housing. Last year's budget allocated 0 general fund dollars for interim housing, while the city found $10 million to pay the annual debt for the Rose Bowl's remodel. This is unfair, unwise, and unacceptable. Finally, there are $20 million of unallocated ARPA funds received this year from the federal government. $3 million of the original $26 million was allocated to the Housing Department in the fiscal year 2023 budget and designated for affordable housing development, not interim housing. Moreover, it is essential to understand that that allocation does little to fill the huge $8.3 million gap in the Housing Department's budget for fiscal year 2023 as compared to last year's revised budget. Please approve substantially more general fund funding and substantial ARPA funding to create more interim housing in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burnt.
Thank you. That completes public comment on this item.
Are there any questions on the draft consolidated annual performance and evaluation report? Vice Mayor Wilson?
Mayor, I just wanted to make sure I fully understood Bill Wong's comments. As you say, there are a number of these on the dashboard that are we're 2 years into a 5-year program, Bill. So if it was linear, would be 40% done. There are a number, rental housing construction, tenant-based rental assistance, rapid rehousing that are off pace, overnight shelter. Can you reiterate that you do think we are, that's what I thought you heard, is that you think we will achieve those goals and we're just,
Yes.
what's happening?
If you look on attachment A at the end of the.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
report, Right, so there are 11 different items there. So the bottom 3, we've already met the 5.
Yeah, I saw that.
goal.
Yeah, that's
On
great.
the-
Congrats.
Yeah, on the rental assistance program, that program hasn't launched yet. So that will launch, that's 30 participants, so it will launch within the next 3 years. And we expect that we will serve those 30 individuals. The owner occupied housing, that's a rental program primarily with the MASH program, and they are moving that program along. The next one on the rental housing rehab program, those are 2 existing projects that we expect to receive an application from the developer, the nonprofit developer, within the next 3 weeks. And it's these are existing buildings and they're not substantial rehabs. The next one, rental housing construction, that is the Ramona site, which is across the street. That's that project. So that project just got through design review and is moving forward. So that's an individual project.
Is that the full 112 units?
Yes, it's been through design review. It got whittled down to 106.
Okay.
And then on the
Rapid rehousing.
The rapid rehousing and the homeless overnight shelter program, Jenny O'Reilly Jones, who oversees our homeless programs, to talk about those 2 goals.
Thank you.
Sure. So for our homeless overnight program, the goal was set, this is specific to funding that we provide for the bad weather shelter. So this goal was set in early 2020. Of course, since then, we have converted our congregate shelter to a non-congregate model. And so while we do serve fewer individuals with this model, we serve them for longer stays. And so the goal just hasn't been adjusted. We've sort of been waiting to see, is this going to be the year that we'll do a congregate model again before we, adjust the goal accordingly. But for now, we've just left it as we originally set it.
So that's the homeless overnight shelter, Jenny?
That's correct, yeah.
Is that the motel voucher showing up there?
Yes, so that's specifically our weather activated motel vouchers, yeah. And these goals are specific to just this funding source. And so our first year of weather activated motel vouchers, we used a different funding source to supplement the program. So it's just not all captured in this report. And then for our rapid rehousing program, this is, we paired funding for services with some mainstream housing choice vouchers. And, these vouchers are almost all issued. And actually this information is just a little bit out of date. And we've had about half our participants lease up. So this program's well underway and is showing a lot of success.
And I would just emphasize the point that Jenny made, that this report is on a very limited number of funding sources. So we currently have 658 units of affordable housing under construction right now, and another almost 1,000 units of missing middle rental housing. None of them are on this because they weren't funded with
Understood.
these funding sources.
But just on the rapid rehousing, Jenny, are you saying that that number is more like 20 rather than 1? Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, so the program has, we don't have it in front of me, but is serving actually 75 households. About half have leased up. You know, as far as just being served with services to get the voucher and look for housing, it's a higher number, but it just wasn't captured in this report.
You know, don't want to beat a dead horse, but the homeless overnight shelter, am I right? We didn't get someone to respond to that?
That is correct. We did not receive any responses to the request for information looking for a congregate shelter site. And so again, this year we'll be doing a kind of a compilation of weather activated motel voucher programs like we have the past 2 years.
But we have recently just begun to have some discussions with a church that just raised their hand fairly recently to say, hey, maybe our site can look at it. It needs some capital improvements, so it wouldn't be ready this year. If everything works out, it wouldn't be ready this year, but maybe next year. So we're still looking for opportunities.
Well, that's a glimmer of hope. I know. I mean, I certainly, the motel vouchers are better than nothing, but okay. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I know these are specific sources of funds for these programs. Are there opportunities, you know, per the public comment, to expand these sources of funds for the coming years? Do we have opportunities to do that, or would we have to look at other sources of funding to be able to provide more programs or have higher goals?
Yeah, these funding sources all come from HUD. These are all HUD funding sources. And so whether we can get more money or not largely depends on the allocation process, the congressional allocation process. Although there are some opportunities on the homeless services side to apply for some additional funding, some bonus funding, and we are in the process of doing that. Been reasonably successful at getting some of the bonus. It's not a lot of money, you know, it's not a lot of money in the whole scheme of things, but we do go after funding when it becomes available.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Mayor, I would also remind the council at EdTech, we did have a report on tiny villages, and there is currently an RFI open. There were no city-owned properties that were conducive, and I just encourage any party to be aware of that and respond. I think, Bill, you said it's open for another week.
Till October 12th.
October 12th.
And we're still, even if some opportunity comes up after that, we would still consider it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else before we move on? Okay, why don't we go ahead and I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
To close the public hearing, Councilmember Hampton,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
Public hearing is closed unanimously.
Next, we move to item 17.
We need to.
Oh, I'm sorry. A motion on the merits to approve the plan, draft plan.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Jones. Questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call.
To approve the staff
Yes.
You're sounding a lot better, Mr. Hampton.
So that was a yes.
Great. Yes.
To approve the staff recommendation, yes. Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
Staff recommendation is approved unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you. Good work. Now we move on to item 17, and this too should be fairly quick, I hope. This is consideration of a resolution to continue to allow the city council and all of its subordinate bodies to continue to meet remotely pursuant to the Brown Act. Let me just say that I believe that we should come back in person. I'm prepared to listen to members of the council, but it will take 5 votes in order to, 5 affirmative votes to continue remote meetings. But I do believe that having the public present would benefit all of us and members of the public. So, Ms. Rivas?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. And I just had one question though. I was wondering what the plan was to do with the start time once we are back in person. Will it stay at 4:30? Do we plan to go back to our old time? I know for folks coming in to meetings, especially public comment, probably the original start time would be more conducive, but just curious what the plan was there.
No, I think actually public comment has worked well, and we can adjust the timing of public comment, but the plan is to start at 4:30 and maybe starting with closed session or, yeah. Yeah, and inviting the public to public comment, to give public comment in person is also part of the plan. Mr. Madison?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm supportive of this as well, although I was a little disappointed to not see our public health department sign off on the report. Do we know where they are? I read an article this morning, I think in the LA Times, that pandemic definitely not over, COVID here to stay, new variants coming to your town this winter, and so forth. What's public health's position on this?
Madam City Attorney?
Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Madison, our understanding is that the public health director is continuing to encourage or recommend mask wearing and social distancing, but they haven't indicated that there would be a problem with having the meetings resume in person with members of the public.
But they are encouraging that we space members
Distancing
of the public.
and mask wearing is encouraged.
And then I read that the legislation that modified the Brown Act, if you will, is extended through 2024, I think. But other than that, is there any sort of direction from the governor's office about this?
I'm not sure if there's anything in particular that you're referring to.
Well, are we still in a statewide state of?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's correct.
So we could continue to elect to, under, I think it's AB 321, we could elect to continue to meet.
If we do, we have to make findings that support the need to do that.
Okay. And then final question is just kind of a, an afterthought to the pandemic, which is Zoom has really, and other platforms. I don't have any vested interest in Zoom versus any of the others. These video platforms have really become well established now. From time to time, although the whole council couldn't meet, once we go back to business as usual, the whole council couldn't meet remotely in the way that we sometimes had. As I understand, individual members could still participate remotely under the Brown Act if there were a quorum that were present at the dais. So will we maintain, and maybe this is a city clerk question, will we still have the Zoom platform to do that? Because I would obviously recommend that we do. It's superior to just a telephone call.
Do you want me to? This is Michelle Bonarise. Mr. Madison, just to kind of clarify a bit, we would return to the Brown Act provisions that existed prior to the emergency declaration and proclamation order of the governor, which would mean that as long as there is a quorum of the body within the jurisdiction, you can have teleconference participation. However, that teleconference location, you may recall, would need to be open to the public and posted. So that's how you could do that, but you would still have to open that participation up to the public.
Of course. All I'm saying is, will we just technologically, will we be able to use the Zoom platform to do that, assuming we comply, obviously, with the rest of the Brown Act?
Technically, we could. However, I think there are some potential challenges. My understanding is the plan is to whatever the council does, that would apply to all of the subordinate bodies as well. And once we try to do that, there are more challenges and difficulties with having the hybrid type participation by the members.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting hybrid participation as a rule. I just know that from time to time, under our charter, many of the council have, I think the model is to have a full-time job. And sometimes travel is required, sometimes family travel, and yet there's still a desire to participate in the meeting. Provided that all complies with the Brown Act, my vote would be that the council be able to use that Zoom platform on those occasional times when that's necessary. It's better for the public and better for the members.
I can turn to the city manager, the city clerk. I know we're contemplating the logistics of resuming in-person meetings, and so that's something that may still be considered. I'm not sure.
So in terms of supporting Zoom meetings, it does, while we do make it look easy, there's a lot of actual technical support that's provided. We have a couple of staff members here that sit with us in the chamber to make it possible. The KPAS staff makes it possible, and then we have run into glitches. And in fact, this afternoon we had a audio issue. So it's not snap a finger and it makes it work. As we update and we increase the technology around the dais, we are trying to make that a much more seamless process, and the support being a little bit easier for the lay city clerk to handle versus three professional IT staff sitting in with us in the meetings. So there is some challenges to it. With advanced notice, we could certainly make it work. But in terms of just making it work without any glitches, that's difficult to promise. I just want to point that out as part of that. And then that does have the trickle down effect for other bodies below the council. So I just want to.
Well, I'm not sure that it should.
Okay.
So if that's something that by resolution or otherwise can be addressed, let me know, Mark, and I'll make the motion. But I'm surprised there's any pushback at all. I think it's a better platform than a telephone call. Granted, it would be an extraordinary case. It would have to comply with the Brown Act and all the rest. But that was my question, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hampton?
Well, thank you. I'm in line with Councilmember Madison as it relates to this. I think that we could do a hybrid. I assume that we have to approve to be able to do what Councilmember Madison is suggesting. I assume that we have to find the findings and approve a hybrid model where we allow people to come into the chambers as public comment. But I still think it's, the process, COVID has brought us one thing that is certain is that there are more people that want to be engaged, and we have to meet them where they're at. And some people aren't going to be able to come down to City Hall, and some council members, quite frankly, may be sick and need to chime into a council meeting and don't want to not participate because they're ill or because they're on working out of the state. I think that we should do a hybrid where we allow people to come in and do the public comment, but at the same time, allow people to still do public comment on Zoom. And that would be and council members can come to the council meeting, just like they are there now, or if they choose because they're sick or, you know, whatever the reason or rationale is, that they feel more safe doing it or more comfortable, not say, I'll just say more comfortable doing it from home, then that should be the prerogative. I think that we should find the findings and also find that we should open up the doors to the public if they decide they want to come in for public comment. There are other jurisdictions that are doing a hybrid where public commenters are still able to come in person for public comment, but also they're still doing public comment via Zoom. And the members of that body are either remote or they are in person. So that would be my preference. My preference would be to find the findings and then we move forward with allowing the doors to open at the city council chambers for public comment and any council member or public that wants to come in via Zoom or they have that option. They have that option. I think that all of our the subcommittees that we had previously, I always used to ask, why don't we videotape and film all of our subcommittee meetings? So if we stop this, those public safety meetings, MSC meetings, et cetera, those will no longer be filmed. They were all recorded before, and we would have to get the recording after the fact. So
they were recorded, Mr. Hampton.
Yeah, they were exactly. That's what I'm saying. They were recorded, but they were not filmed.
I see.
They were not. There was no video, right? I mean, and there was no option. There was no option before COVID for a member of the public to call in. The only thing they had was an email. And I'm thinking of, you know, tonight we just had a remembrance of accessibility, right? I mean, we have made our meetings accessible to all. Literally, COVID has forced us to make public meetings, accessible to all people.
Ms. Williams?
So,
I'm sorry.
Those are my comments. I would be in favor of, or I could make a motion of a hybrid model where that rings true. Or be in favor of what Councilmember Madison mentioned, but it sounds very similar to what I'm saying.
Ms. Williams?
So just a question on the proposal that's before us. So if we vote yes, then everything comes back in person and we don't have the Zoom option.
You're saying
If we
if
vote
you
no.
vote yes?
Oh, sorry. If we vote to not continue
And you don't need to
remote
vote.
meetings.
It will happen. It will go back to
Okay.
in-person meetings if you don't take any
Okay,
action.
but it's all in person. It's
Yes.
not like we have this, because it sounds like it's a technical issue that if you every now and then have someone on Zoom or not on Zoom, we have to have, these guys are great from IT, but they're here all night and sort of trying to run this thing for one person who's remote or what have you. So it sounds like it's a staffing issue and a resource issue for us to continue to be hybrid. So it sounds like us moving forward, going back to public meetings would be fully going back to public meetings. If somebody calls in, maybe if they let the city clerk know ahead of time, maybe they can join on Zoom or maybe not, or what's the technical?
If you're talking about council members,
Yes.
yes, then if we had, 48 hours or 72 hours notice, like we need to for posting the agenda, then we can work through and make and accommodate that. That's not, we're not saying that's not possible.
Okay.
And that council member's location would need to be posted in the agenda and open to the public. So if they are ill, I mean, I don't know if
Yeah.
anyone from the public would want to go, but it is something that would be required under the current provisions of the Brown Act.
Okay.
They may change, I don't know.
So then if we decided to approve this to continue remotely, then we would just continue as is, or could we bring a portion of the public back? Could we kind of have the best of both worlds where you could decide to be on Zoom if you want to be, or not be on Zoom if you don't want to be, if we vote to continue this? That's like we just have that optionality.
So you're saying to continue the emergency with the
Mhm.
findings, but to provide that people could participate via hybrid remote participation as members of the public as well as the council.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's odd because we're extending an emergency saying that no
yeah,
one should be
and
here.
you're saying
but-
it's an emergency and it's not
Yeah.
safe for people to be.
Well, that's what we're doing at the airport, Felicia.
Yeah,
they
but
probably
We're
did.
allowing
Did they
people to come in
everyone,
from-
no, because the public's not allowed.
No, the public is allowed.
No, they aren't. Look at
No,
the
remember,
agenda.
we just had a public comment. Once again, if you don't remember, we just had maybe, I don't know if you were at that meeting. There was a public commenter that came in person.
Yes, and they were
and-
escorted out by the police. So
No. They allowed them to give the public comment.
Yes.
Now public comment. Yes, and now public comment at the airport, if a person decides they want to come in, and I think that you might have not been at that meeting. If a person decides that they want to come in, that will not happen. They will be allowed to speak publicly at our meetings.
So I was at the meeting where that happened and the chair forgot that the public was not allowed, so they allowed the public member. And we had a discussion about it afterwards on the legal committee as, does it put the airport at risk because we have the emergency still in place? So I think it's still a question at Burbank.
Actually, we voted to have that as a hybrid. And Ross, that was one of Ross Alvage's last votes. I don't think you were at that. I think you might have not been at that meeting. So I apologize.
Okay.
I thought you knew that
Okay.
was an option. Sorry.
Okay, then per Councilmember Hampton's comment, with Burbank, we can show up in person, not show up in person. People can be in person. It's kind of like this. So maybe there's a way to check that because people have the option to
Yes,
go on
and-
Zoom without having to disclose everything about them and where they are and what they're doing.
Right, and I don't know, I can't speak to that jurisdiction, but if you continue with this resolution, you would be able to do that, and you could have hybrid participation, but you'd have to think about the effects of your findings, saying that we
We're still
don't
in
think it's
emergency.
prudent to have in-person attendance by members of the public. But there are other agencies that have hybrid participation by members of the public. And there are others that have it only in person and in writing, which is what we did before.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I was just wondering if staff has looked into what the county of LA has done, because we've extended the AB 361, made the findings, but also allowed the public to come into the board meetings.
I have been informed that the public was allowed to participate in person in the board meetings. I'm not familiar with the resolution that they passed. I don't know, but I haven't looked at that.
Yeah, because I think it's a hybrid approach, right? Yeah.
Right here.
Okay.
But LA County is also over 250,000, right? So
Right.
they
There's
allow-
a Brown Act requirement that any entity that's a population of 250,000 or more is required to continue to be hybrid. So there's some complexity to it.
Yeah, so the law actually mandates it because of the size of the county and the city.
Mayor. Sorry, I was in the queue.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
That's all right.
Vice Mayor Wilson.
I was curious. I mean, certainly the advent of Zoom, I'm thinking about, as Councilmember Hampton said, there are certain people who have a very difficult time getting to the council chambers. And we do have the infrastructure. It's weird, though, that's not kind of a emergency statement. It's a statement around providing access. So, Michelle, is the Brown Act is a state act?
Yes.
Are they looking at how to reconcile the ability to allow the public to engage without declaring an emergency action that,
Well, and they are, and that's what the city clerk and the mayor just mentioned. The way the state law is now, if you have more than 250,000 and you resume, you're no longer using the emergency, you have to allow the remote participation by members of the public. We're under the 250, so, and other
we
agencies.
don't have to,
that-
but can we allow it without?
We could.
But we don't, but then we're subject to the Legacy Brown Act of, Councilmember Hampton can open his house up.
Well, it would be hybrid for the public.
Public.
It's not hybrid for the council members. Council members need to leave, if you're going to
It's hybrid
participate
for the
remotely,
Public.
then you would participate like we would if it was a teleconference. You would put your address and the
Okay.
public could come to whatever location and participate where you're at. So the hybrid would be just for the public.
And by the way, that's whether you are at home or in a hotel in
Pittsburgh.
any part of the country or world. Yeah.
But you can have the remote hybrid participation of the public without continuing this emergency action.
Why don't we look to the city manager quickly?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to raise the concern. There's a staffing concern here to both. It takes all our staff to do an in-person meeting, and then, as we just heard, it takes all of our staff and then some to do a virtual. So if thinking about hybrid, where you'd have people, the members of the public, there's legal concerns as well. I think there's different rules that apply to different sized jurisdictions. So we could look at all that. We hear what the council is saying, and we could start taking a look at what we could do. But I do think it would be quite taxing on the city clerk to both prepare for and conduct an in-person and a virtual Zoom meeting, given all the requirements. So one way to address this might be to continue the resolution one more month, give us a chance to meet. I just got a text that there's a meeting tomorrow to talk about many of these issues, and then we can report at the next meeting.
I think that's prudent. I would support that.
So what it would mean is that the October 17th and October 24th meetings would be remote. And then we are canceled on, so we're canceled on the 10th, we're canceled on the 31st, we're canceled on the November 7th meeting the day before the election. So the next in-person meeting would conceivably be the 14th of November. We could bring back something on the 24th of October to weigh which way you want to go and go from there.
But I do think, there are some real strong arguments around having people participate remotely. I know there's cost and complexity, so I think we should evaluate what that is. But there is value to, I said we just had the disability folks talk about, how hard it is and how they want to be included. So I think we owe it to that part of our population to at least explore this and see, how to accommodate that. So I would support a motion I'm willing to move the continuation of this so we can allow the staff to complete the work to see if a hybrid model is sustainable or viable and what it would take.
I'll second that.
One of the issues that members of the public have raised with me is that we don't turn their camera on. And so we have to be.
They're talking, I think, about council members.
No, members of the public.
We should not do that.
Okay.
because
There's been problems in other
over what they're doing.
There's been problems in other jurisdictions about what's behind.
Well, so one of the, I understand all that, but one of the things that as we're looking at it is there a way to capture just the person and blur out the background? I know there are challenges, but because it's been raised by members of the public, I think we should look at it. And if there's not a way to do it responsibly, then we ought to have an answer for that, as long as we're researching.
We can include a discussion of that tomorrow when there's that meeting, among many meetings I predict as we talk through this in preparation for October 24th.
Okay. We do have one.
Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So is it clear to staff sort of what we're looking for, or do you need us to kind of repeat that? or wish list?
For me, it would be, as I'm going to involve myself and be part of this, would be helpful to, be clear in understanding. I hear clearly that council members would like the option to be able to, under the old Brown Act, the non-emergency state of affairs, teleconference using Zoom or some other platform, because they can show their face and it's not just voice. So that part to me is clear. What's a little bit less clear is, is the council also asking us to look at the feasibility of making public comment in the same way, hybrid or just council?
I think the public, I mean, that's the accessibility issue. So
Hybrid for the public. The public is actually the most important to me, especially with participation and accessibility.
And then there was one other issue that was raised by, I think in the discussion with Councilmember Madison. Would that also then be the same rule for all of the other 26 subordinate bodies? And that's where we start talking about the massive investment of staff resources and technology and everything else it would take.
I think that would be the evaluate. I mean, does it have to be consistent?
It doesn't have to be, but we often get pushback from commissioners that have been appointed by the council who they've wanted to allow the public to participate by Zoom once we return in person. They want I've heard from multiple commissions that they'd like that option as well. So it's just a question of whether, from a policy perspective, you want the council to be different from those other bodies. We have maintained consistency to this point.
Well, I think the question would be, it would be nice, but the question is, what's the cost? I think I'm looking at Mark like shaking his head, like, how hard is this going to be? And certainly the council, I mean, this is where the real policy is getting made. I mean, we make the laws here. I think I'd love to have it be hybrid as to the greatest extent possible, but that may not be economically feasible or operationally feasible. So I think that would be part of the work, Miguel, in terms of figuring out what that sweet spot is.
I think that we can bring you back some information by the October 24th meeting. The city clerk's office supports the city council and the council committees. It's the other departments that support the 18 other advisory bodies that report to the council. So we can get some information to you.
And just to clarify on the staffing stuff, so is the challenge having a council member by Zoom or getting public comment by Zoom? Is that the challenge? So it's sort of managing the queue and sort of managing the ins and outs and stuff?
I mean, when you're talking about members of the public in the audience, and we're managing the members of the public in the audience, and then managing the members of the public on Zoom,
Yes.
and then managing the council members on Zoom, and if we're allowing people to remote in, that might be staff presentations or whatnot. There's a complexity to each phase of that and each layer of that. We want to make it possible, as much as possible, and we'll come back with more information.
And if I can simply add, and I think all those complexities get multiplied by the different subordinate bodies. I think it was 26 or something like that, of whom eight, whatever the number is that the clerk's office provides services to, and then the other 18 are done by departments. So I have to find out what staffing they have, what staffing IT has to support all of that. And we'll bring all that information back as best we can on October 24th to show you the different options and the different level of resources that would be required.
I mean, one thought would be helpful in that, Miguel, is like how much public comment do you get in certain bodies? Like, like the police commission oversight. My guess is there's probably a lot of engagement. There may be other commissions where they don't, and maybe it's not economical or feasible. I don't know. I think that's kind of the work we're talking about.
Right. And I would defer to planning department, but I'm sure the planning commission gets a lot of public comment depending on issues and historic preservation and those types of bodies as well, design commission. So
I think the need varies quite a bit across those various bodies, and maybe I don't know if we can cut cut it in different ways, but I think we'd look to you guys. to
We'll
provide-
we'll do the best we can to bring you back the information you need to make a decision.
So we need, okay. If we're going to continue, we need to make a vote right now.
Right, we have a motion
a-
and a second
You have
to,
a public comment?
yes, we do have a
One
motion and a
public
second
commenter.
to approve the staff recommendation to continue. But we have Emmanuel Nahara.
Mr. Naheda, where you been? We miss you in here.
Hello,
Hi, Manny. How you doing?
I know. Good, how are you?
Good to hear from you. Go ahead.
All right, so pretty much, I was at the beginning of this discussion, I was really happy to where the council was heading towards. But then Councilmember Madison and Councilmember Hampton wanted to keep a hybrid. First thing off that is this should have been thought of before. I know Mayor Gordo, and I appreciate you trying to get the public back in there, wanting the public inside the city chambers. But the time to bring back the public is now. After the special election to appoint Justin Jones, I know a lot of people were mad that the council was ignoring them, and I think the best way for the residents of District 3 or any member of Pasadena to show their displeasure is to be present in front of the city council. I was looking at the Brown Act, and you guys do have an out if you don't want to publish your private address. It's 54953, Section E. Sorry. Section B, big letter E, number 1. The legislative body holds a meeting and has determined by majority vote that members will not be required to identify the address of any private location from which the member elects to teleconference, as long as it's within the city of Pasadena. So, Mr. Madison, I don't know, like, if you and Mr. Hampton and who else is remote? Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Rivas, if you choose not to have your address posted, the council will have to vote to give you a pass. But the time to have the public back should be now. I know you guys want to have a hybrid, but yeah, the cost of it is going to be high. So I hope you guys vote no on the amendment, on the motion, and allow the public back inside the city chambers. Thank you for your time. Oh, and I'd like to welcome Justin Jones to the city council. Congratulations. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you,
That
Mr.
completes
Nahara.
public comment on this item.
Is there a response on the?
Yes,
issue raised by
the
Mr. Naheda?
Brown Act section that the governor lifted is what we're using to continue our resolutions to allow the council members to participate remotely without identifying location, et cetera. But the statute goes on in one of his orders to say, but if you go back to not having this 30-day extension, then you go back to the pre-existing Brown Act provisions, unless that has changed in the past week, which I don't think it has.
And if I may just, I want to clarify that if the council were to approve this motion, it's on the basis of our public health department's recommendation.
Yes.
That COVID is still a concern, a safety risk. So it's on that basis. And in doing so, if the council were so inclined to approve this motion, that would give us that opportunity to come back October 24th. But the basis of this motion has to be the public health's recommendation to continue wearing a mask due to COVID.
Right, and that's the findings that are set forth in the proposed resolution, address that, as well as the reference that I made earlier to the fact that the health director had indicated that there was a strong recommendation to have the distancing and the mask wearing. And Mr. Madison even added more basis in his reference to the article he read in the Los Angeles Times to suggest that COVID is still around.
Thank you. Any other?
Mayor, I mean, there is, obviously, we could go back in person and then work out the hybrid after the fact and figure out whether we could light that up. I mean, if there's, I know you have a real desire to, so do I, honestly, to get people back in the chambers. So we could decouple those efforts.
The other way around. Yeah.
Because I'm not sure how long it's going to take the analysis, and then, you know, if we need staffing. So I don't, I mean, there has been an expectation that by many of us and the public that we will allow people back in the chambers sooner. So that would be a different way to skin the cat. Sorry for any cat owners. We got dog owners over here.
We're back to the cats
So anyway,
and dogs.
I would, if there was desire to do that, then, you know, I think that's super, maybe even a better path.
Yeah.
Mayor, with all due respect, I think the staff has all the information they need at this point, and we should call the question and move on.
Well, this is a different approach that's been raised. And are there any comments or I'm sorry? There is a motion. Are there any comments, Ms. Rivas? And then we can go ahead and call the question.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, it sounds like we're going to move ahead with this motion, but I'd be open to the proposal Vice Mayor just raised. It allows us to get back in person, but still kind of figure out if hybrid is an option for the public, which I think is something we should explore. So that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Mayor, do you have, I mean, what's your feeling? You know, you're the chair.
My preference is to be back in person, and to give the public an opportunity to be here. So, you know, that's what we've heard over and over people want to do. And so I do think we should do that sooner rather than later. I thought we would be back in May and then June, and I listened carefully to my colleagues, and here we are. But I do think it's time to be back in person.
So if we go back in person, I guess that's still, Miguel, your work plan or city manager work plan to figure out the hybrid still exists. And I think we would want to have some timeline as to when we thought there would be at least analysis. I don't know they're going to give us per se a recommendation.
We'll get on it right away. I do think it's going to be a city manager staff and city clerk staff and city attorney staff all working together on this.
Right. Is that like a 30-day?
But I don't want to, whenever you get.
I was thinking, is that a 30-day? And like, if we say we're not going to continue the emergency, we could go in person, and then within X, give us a date, we'll commit to having on the agenda ability to go hybrid. Because I think it's worth exploring, and we need to, once again, in terms of access.
We could go for the next 2 meetings in person and have a more informed view on how that would work as the staff conducts its analysis.
So then we would bring you a report on the November 14th.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor, I was just going to point out that we have 2 council meetings in the next 6 weeks.
Right.
I intend to support the current motion that's on the table that gives the staff the full flexibility here. So.
I intend to support the same motion.
What did Tyrone say?
Should we vote?
Okay. All right.
So to approve the staff recommendation, Councilmember Hampton,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Okay, excuse me, the staff recommendation.
It's to approve the resolution extending for another 30 days, the remote participation.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
thank you, Michelle, for clarifying. Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
I would say no, but in deference to my colleagues, I will say maybe so, yes.
So we will continue to be remote until 30 days from now, right?
And
So
we'll have
next-
the staff analysis before that in terms of the
Right.
hybrid. Okay.
It'll come, we'll effort to bring it forward October 24th is the last meeting before we would have to come back.
Not where I wish we found ourselves. Okay. Next. That was a short one. Next,
We
first
have,
reading.
we have first reading of an ordinance. This is an ordinance, this is item 18. This is an ordinance of the City of Pasadena amending various sections of Title 17 zoning code in parens of the City of Pasadena Municipal Code to implement the South Fair Oaks specific plan update, amending the official zoning map established by the zoning code, Chapter 17.20, Section 17.20.020, to modify the boundaries of the South Fair Oaks specific plan, redesignate zones within the South Fair Oaks specific plan update area, and amending Chapter 17.30 to modify the Central District specific plan.
This is my district, Mayor. I'll offer the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. It's been
Second.
offered. No second needed on the offer. Yeah. Mr. Madison offers. Ms. Williams votes yes. Roll
So-
call.
To conduct first reading, Councilmember Hampton. Councilmember Hampton?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas?
No.
No. Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Gordo?
Yes.
Motion is approved, 7 in favor, 1 against.
Next, we'll move to second readings, and the first one is item 19, Mr. Clerk.
So this was an ordinance offered by Councilmember Hampton. This is an ordinance of the City of Pasadena amending Title IV in parens Revenue and Finance, Sections 4.17.050 and 4.19.040 of the Pasadena Municipal Code related to the time of collection of the residential impact fee and the traffic reduction and transportation improvement fee. Councilmember Hampton, to adopt?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Gordo?
Yes.
The ordinance is adopted without opposition.
Another second reading, item 20, Mr. Clerk.
So this ordinance was also introduced by Councilmember Hampton. This is an uncodified ordinance of the City of Pasadena granting assignment of a non-exclusive solid waste collection franchise from direct disposal to California Waste Services LLC and amending ordinance number 7396 to adopt. Councilmember Hampton,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted without opposition.
And now we have closed session. Before we do that, I'd like to ask us to stand and adjourn in memory of Dr. Ross Selvage, longtime Pasadena resident and truly a classic Pasadena and American story, someone who served with distinction at every level of government, and who served his country, his community, and his city, again, with great courage and distinction. And I would ask that we adjourn in his memory. We are adjourned.
So we're recessing. The city council will convene in the virtual meeting room to discuss closed session items B, C, D, and E on today's agenda. An opportunity is provided at this time for public comment on the closed session. There being no public comment requests, the city council will now recess into closed session to discuss B, C, D, and E on today's agenda. Council members, we will reconvene at 7:24. 7:34. 7:34. Sorry about that.
Means we're done.